I never thought my life would unravel over a pan of scrambled eggs in a tiny kitchen in Flagstaff, Arizona. My name's Matthew, I'm 34, and up until a few months ago, I genuinely believed I was one of the lucky ones. I'd met Lisa 5 years ago at a work conference, and it was the kind of connection you hear about in rom-coms, effortless, magnetic, full of little inside jokes. We were the couple people pointed at and said, they just work. We were planning a wedding. Well, Lisa was. I was mostly along for the ride, thrilled to be marrying the woman I adored. But then, almost like someone flipped a switch, Lisa changed. It started small. She began working late more often, saying her boss was demanding with wedding season coming up. I didn't push. She was always ambitious, and I admired that about her. But soon, the late nights turned into weekends out with friends I don't know, and her phone, once left casually on the coffee table, was suddenly glued to her hand or flipped screen down. There was this one morning, the one that still haunts me, when I was making breakfast. She came into the kitchen, smiling like nothing was wrong, kissed my cheek, and poured herself coffee. And in that moment, I remember thinking, maybe I'm just being paranoid. God, how I wish I'd listened to that gut feeling instead of brushing it aside. It was about 3 weeks before the wedding when the cracks stopped being cracks and turned into full-blown craters. Lisa was going out almost every night. When I asked, she'd brush it off, some vague explanation about a friend needing her or a bachelorette party planning meeting. And then the messages started. At first, I didn't notice. But one night, as we sat on the couch, her phone buzzed, lighting up the room. I glanced over without thinking and caught a glimpse of a message preview. Can't wait to see you again tonight. Last night was insane. It was from someone named Sam. My stomach twisted, and for the first time in 5 years, I felt like an outsider in my own home. I didn't say anything right away. Instead, I spent the next few days trying to convince myself there was some reasonable explanation. Maybe it was an old friend. Maybe she was helping someone through a breakup. But I couldn't ignore the late nights, the sudden gym membership, the new clothes, the way she took her phone into the bathroom and never left it unattended. The air between us changed. It was like sleeping next to a stranger. I finally broke one night when she came home at 2 a.m., smelling like someone else's cologne. She slid into bed next to me like nothing was wrong, and something in me snapped. The next morning, when she was in the shower, I checked her phone. I know, I'm not proud of it, but I needed answers. And there they were. Explicit messages between her and Sam. Pictures. Plans to meet again. Jokes about how clueless I was. My hand shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. I felt like the floor had given out under me. When she came out, smiling, wrapped in a towel, I asked her flat out. And she didn't even flinch. She smirked, and said it was a loyalty test. That she was just seeing if I cared enough to find out. That it didn't mean anything, and that I was overreacting. I can't describe the cold that settled into my chest right then. It wasn't anger, not exactly. It was something hollower, deeper. I told her the wedding was off. She laughed, an actual laugh, like I was some child throwing a tantrum. And then she got busy. In the days that followed, she went on the offensive. She told friends and family that I'd lost it, that I was paranoid and controlling. She drained half our joint account before I could freeze it. She showed up at my job, smiling sweetly while planting little seeds of doubt about my mental health to coworkers. It was like living in a nightmare where the villain wore my fiancé's face. But here's the part Lisa didn't see coming. I didn't roll over. I remember standing in our apartment, staring at the empty closet where her clothes used to be, and thinking, this is it, the part of the movie where the main character breaks. But I didn't break. Not in the way Lisa probably expected. Instead, something inside me sharpened. I stopped answering her calls. I froze the accounts she hadn't drained yet. I called my best friend, Max, who's a lawyer, and told him everything, the cheating, the money, the lies. Max, bless him, didn't even say, I told you so. He just asked for details. Meanwhile, Lisa was busy setting fire to every bridge we had. She told my parents I'd become controlling and was having a breakdown. She texted my friends claiming I was making up stories to cover my insecurities. It should have crushed me. And honestly, for a couple days, it almost did. I didn't eat much. I barely slept. I kept playing back every moment in my head, the morning coffee smiles, the way she kissed my forehead, the way she once cried in my arms when her dog died, and I wondered, was any of it real? But then came the morning I checked my email. A message from our landlord. Lisa had tried to terminate the lease early and collect the security deposit without telling me. That was the jolt I needed. I started gathering everything, screenshots of her messages, bank statements, records of her withdrawals, texts she sent to friends trashing me. I pulled phone records, social media posts, even the Venmo payments to Sam with their little heart emojis. Max helped me organize it all into a neat, devastating folder. A week later, I served Lisa with a formal letter canceling the wedding and outlining my demands: repayment of the stolen funds, removal of her name from the lease, and no contact going forward. Her reaction was pure Lisa. First, she showed up at my place, banging on the door, wailing about how I was ruining everything. Then came the flood of texts, some apologetic, some furious. She even sent flowers to my office, which I sent right back. And when none of that worked, she did what narcissists do best: she played the victim. She told mutual friends I was emotionally abusive. She hinted on social media that I was unstable. She tried to paint a picture of herself as the fragile, heartbroken woman discarded by a cold, unfeeling fiancé. But by then, I didn't care, because I'd finally remembered who I was without her. I thought once I sent that final letter, Lisa would fade out of my life like a bad memory. Oh, how naive I was. Instead, that's when she escalated. First came the stalking, subtle at first. I'd spot her car parked across from my building late at night. Once, I caught a glimpse of her slipping into the back row at the gym where I worked out. Then there were the hang-up calls, the anonymous messages, the accidental run-ins at the grocery store, the coffee shop, the gas station. She even showed up at Max's office, smiling sweetly and pretending she just wanted to talk planting seeds, trying to make me look like the crazy one. Max called me right after, his voice tight. "Matt, you need to shut this down legally." But the final straw came the night I got home from work and found my apartment door slightly ajar. My heart slammed in my chest as I pushed it open. Inside, everything looked normal until I saw the ring box on the kitchen counter. The ring I had bought for Lisa. I'd locked it away in the closet. Next to it was a note in her handwriting. "You're not done with me." That was it. No signature. No explanation. Just 5 words that chilled me to the bone. I called the police. Filed a report. Changed my locks. Installed cameras. And then, with Max's help, I filed for a restraining order. I'll tell you this: nothing will harden your heart faster than seeing the face you once wanted to marry twisted in rage across a courtroom. Lisa didn't show up defeated. No. She came in with a lawyer and a fake smile, painting me as some cold, paranoid man who misunderstood everything. But I had the evidence: texts, calls, messages, bank records, even security footage. And this time, the truth was on my side. When the judge granted the restraining order, Lisa's face cracked for the first time. Not much, just a flicker in her perfect composure, but it was enough. Walking out of that courtroom felt like walking out of a burning house barefoot. My feet were raw, but I was free. Emotionally, though, it was anything but clean. You don't spend years building a life with someone and walk away without scars. There were days I caught myself reaching for my phone to text her about a funny meme or a song she used to love. Nights when the silence in my apartment felt heavy enough to crush me. Mornings when I wondered if I'd ever trust someone again. But underneath all that, underneath the grief, the anger, the humiliation, was something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. After the restraining order, the dust settled, but the silence was brutal. I remember walking through downtown Flagstaff one evening, passing couples holding hands, laughing over drinks, and feeling like I was watching life through a window I couldn't open. Friends checked in at first, but over time, the calls slowed. People have their own lives, their own dramas, and eventually you become old news. I didn't blame them. What surprised me more was how many people quietly admitted they'd seen it coming. One night at a bar, my coworker Jenna, the one who always stayed a little too late at work, sat across from me nursing a whiskey. She looked at me, gave this sad little smile, and said, "We all knew something was off, Matt. You were the only one trying not to see it." That hit me harder than I expected. I started therapy, something I never thought I'd do. Sitting on a beige couch across from a stranger, spilling my guts about betrayal, insecurity, and the gnawing fear that maybe I wasn't enough after all. But session by session, I started reclaiming pieces of myself. I realized Lisa hadn't just cheated on me with Sam. She'd cheated me out of years of my life. Time I could have spent with people who wanted to be there. Energy I could have poured into passions I'd sidelined. I took up running again. I started playing guitar, something I hadn't touched in years. I reconnected with friends I'd drifted from, sometimes just over cheap pizza and old inside jokes. And then came the moment I didn't expect. About 6 months after the split, I ran into Sam. Yeah, that's Sam. It was at a random coffee shop, the kind of place where everyone pretends they're working on a novel, but really just scrolls Instagram. I recognized him before he recognized me. He was thinner than I imagined, more tired looking, and when his eyes landed on me, something flickered. Guilt, maybe, or fear. We didn't talk. We didn't need to. Because in that second, I realized something no breakup, no courtroom, no therapist could have taught me. It wasn't about me. It was never about me. Lisa wasn't testing my loyalty. She was testing how much she could take before someone stopped her. And for a long time, I didn't. That was on me. But her betrayal? That was on her. As I walked out of that coffee shop, I felt lighter than I had in months. Not healed. Not yet. But on my way. There's this weird space you find yourself in after surviving a betrayal like that. It's like you're walking through your own life, but everything feels slightly off. The coffee shop on the corner still serves your usual. Your gym playlist still hypes you up. Your friends still tell dumb jokes. But you're different. And it's not just sadness. It's sharper. I found myself rethinking everything. Not just with Lisa, but with myself. How did I get so blind? Why did I ignore the red flags? Why did I cling so hard to the version of us I wanted to believe in, instead of the one that was right in front of me? Therapy helped. So did time. But what really shifted things was something I didn't see coming at all. About 8 months after the breakup, I got a call from Lisa's sister, Rachel. I hadn't spoken to her in over a year. We were never especially close. She always struck me as sharper, less forgiving, maybe even a little cold. But now her voice on the phone sounded hesitant, even apologetic. She told me Lisa was spiraling. Sam had bailed. Apparently, the great love story fizzled after a few months. Lisa had been crashing on friends' couches, jobless, and making a mess of her relationships. Rachel said she wasn't asking for me to do anything, just thought I should know. I didn't know how to feel. Part of me wanted to laugh. Karma, right? Another part of me wanted to pity her. But mostly, I felt nothing. It was a strange kind of victory, one that didn't need parades or revenge or a triumphant speech. Lisa was alone because of Lisa. That was when I really started to let go. The following week, I packed up the last box of her things I'd been avoiding, little odds and ends I hadn't had the energy to face. A scarf she left behind, a mug from a trip we took to Sedona, a card she once slipped into my bag before a work trip. I didn't read the card. I didn't need to. I dropped the box off at Rachel's place and walked away. And you know what's funny? On the walk back to my apartment, I passed that same coffee shop, the one where I'd seen Sam months ago. I peeked inside, saw a new couple tucked into the corner where I used to sit with Lisa, laughing like the world was made just for them. For the first time in almost a year, I smiled. Not a sad, bitter smile. A real one. Because that chapter was over. And mine was just getting interesting. The funny thing about rebuilding your life is that it doesn't happen with some grand, sweeping moment. It's 100 small moments that sneak up on you. Like the first time I went to a party again and didn't instinctively check my phone, waiting for Lisa to text. Or when I realized I could decorate my apartment the way I wanted, without second-guessing if she'd approve. Or the day I found myself laughing so hard at a movie with Max that I almost spilled my drink, and I didn't think about her at all. For a while, I wondered if I was doing something wrong by moving on. It's strange. Even when someone betrays you, part of you clings to the grief like it's a badge of honor. You feel guilty when you catch yourself feeling okay. But that passed. One random Thursday, Jenna from work, the one who sat with me at the bar months ago, dropped by my desk and asked if I wanted to join her and a couple of friends for a hike. I almost said no, out of habit. But something in me stirred. I heard myself say, sure. Why not? And that was the beginning of something I hadn't expected, not a love story. Not yet. But a reminder that there was life outside the rubble Lisa left behind. We hiked. We laughed. I saw sunsets I hadn't noticed before. I remembered what it felt like to be part of something, to be seen without having to perform or prove myself. One night, walking back from a hike, Jenna asked casually, "So, how's life after the storm?" I thought about it. It wasn't perfect. My heart was still a little bruised. Trust came slower now. But I was standing, breathing, even smiling. Better than I thought it'd be, I said. And for the first time, I meant it. Meanwhile, word trickled in about Lisa. She'd left town, apparently trying to start over somewhere on the coast. Sam was long gone, her reputation a little battered. And here's the kicker, I didn't care. Not in the angry, vindictive way. Not even in the sad, wistful way. Just nothing. Because sometimes the biggest win isn't revenge or redemption. It's indifference. It's peace. Spring rolled into Flagstaff quietly, as if the whole town was exhaling after a long winter, much like me, honestly. I remember standing on my balcony one evening, looking out at the dusky purple sky, feeling something I hadn't felt in what felt like a lifetime, calm. No tightness in my chest, no restless thoughts, no imaginary arguments with Lisa playing out in my head. Just quiet. It had taken months to get here. I sold the engagement ring, not out of bitterness, but because it felt like the last tether to a life that didn't belong to me anymore. I used part of the money to book a solo trip, nothing fancy, just a long weekend in Santa Fe, wandering art galleries, eating too many enchiladas, and remembering what it felt like to be curious about the world again. I caught myself in the mirror one morning before the trip, brushing my teeth, and thought, so this is what survival looks like. There were still cracks, sure, but there was also strength I hadn't seen in myself before. Back in Flagstaff, life kept unfolding. Work got busy. Jenna and I became close, no romance, just a steady, real friendship, one built on hikes, laughter, and those quiet, late-night talks you don't plan, but end up meaning everything. One night, we sat on my balcony with beers in hand, watching the stars poke through the dark. She looked over at me and said, "You know, you're not the same guy I met a year ago." I asked what she meant. She smiled and said, "You stopped apologizing for existing." That hit me harder than I expected. Because she was right. For years, I'd been making myself smaller, easier, more palatable, first for Lisa, then for the people she wanted me to impress, then even for myself. I hadn't realized how much of myself I'd shoved into the background just to keep the peace. But now, there was no one to shrink for. The version of me sitting there that night, tired but whole, scarred but open, was someone I'd fought hard to become. And, for the first time in a long time, I actually liked him. There were still moments that surprised me. Like running into old mutual friends, people who'd been on Team Lisa at first but now, months later, would pull me aside at the grocery store or at some neighborhood event and quietly say, "You were right to walk away." There was no satisfaction in hearing it, just a kind of weary relief, as if the last puzzle pieces were finally snapping into place. Or like finding a song on an old playlist and realizing it no longer hurt to hear it. That was a big one. And then came the moment I never thought I'd get to: forgiveness. Not the dramatic, movie scene kind where you stand across from the person who wrecked you and say, "I forgive you," through tears. No, the quiet, private kind that happens when you're folding laundry, or stuck in traffic, or brushing your teeth one night and realize you just let it go. I remember the exact moment it hit. I was walking through Buffalo Park at sunset, headphones in, the sky all pink and gold, and out of nowhere, the thought floated up, "I hope she's okay." Not in a longing way. Not in a take-me-back way. Just a gentle release, like setting down a weight you didn't even realize you were still carrying. I smiled to myself, shook my head a little, and kept walking. That was the night I realized something important. Forgiveness isn't about them. It's about freeing yourself. By late summer, I was no longer counting the months since Lisa left. The markers shifted from since the breakup to since the last hike, or since that great night at the pub, or since I started learning guitar again. Life stopped orbiting around what I'd lost and began revolving around what I was slowly, stubbornly building. One Saturday morning, I met up with Jenna and some friends at the farmer's market downtown. We wandered through stalls filled with fresh peaches, wildflowers, and old vinyl records. At one point, Jenna nudged me, grinning, and said, "You're different, you know." I raised an eyebrow, half laughing. "How so?" She shrugged, grabbing a peach, turning it over in her hands. "You're lighter. Not carrying so much of her." It hit me then, standing between crates of fruit and second-hand books, that she was right. I was no longer walking through my days dragging the ghost of Lisa beside me. Even the apartment felt different now. Where once it had been full of reminders, her leftover scarf on the chair, her favorite mug, the playlist we used to cook to, it was now unmistakably mine. I'd filled the space with things that made me feel alive: new art on the walls, a scratched old guitar by the window, books I'd been meaning to read but never had the time or emotional bandwidth for. One night, after the farmer's market, I sat on my balcony alone, a guitar across my lap, strumming clumsy chords as the sky deepened from pink to indigo. I thought about where I'd been a year ago, sitting in that same spot, heart in pieces, wondering how I'd ever get through the next day, much less the next month. And here I was. Still here. Still standing. Still me. It wasn't triumph in the cinematic sense. No fireworks, no slow clap from the universe. Just the steady, quiet realization that I had survived something meant to break me and come out the other side not bitter, not closed off, but somehow softer. It's strange, the way heartbreak cracks you open. You think it'll harden you, and sometimes it does for a while. But if you're lucky, and you're stubborn, and you surround yourself with the right people, those cracks become the spaces where the light gets in. It was a late September evening when the last unexpected twist came, not dramatic, not painful, but one of those moments that sneaks in under your skin and stays with you. I was walking home from the bookstore, a bag of used paperbacks slung over my shoulder, when I saw a familiar figure across the street. Lisa's sister, Rachel. For a heartbeat, I froze. But when our eyes met, she lifted a hand in a small wave, hesitant but genuine. We crossed the street toward each other. Rachel looked softer somehow. Tired, maybe, but no longer guarded. She asked how I was. I told her the truth, better. Not perfect, but better. Then she surprised me. She told me Lisa had called her a few days before, drunk and crying, from some city on the coast. She was alone. She missed everything she had lost. And Rachel, in her blunt, no-nonsense way, told her, "You did this, not him." It didn't hit me with triumph or smug satisfaction. If anything, it made me a little sad. Because I remembered the good parts, the early days when Lisa and I were just two flawed people trying to build something. And I realized, in that moment, that grief doesn't always end in clean lines. Sometimes you carry a little shard of it forever, not cutting you anymore, but smooth and cool in your pocket. Rachel put her hand on my arm and said, "You were the best thing that happened to her. She just didn't know how to keep it." I thanked her, sincerely. We parted ways on that quiet Flagstaff street, and I watched her walk away, thinking how strange life is, the way some people exit and others stay just long enough to help you put the last pieces in place. That night, back on my balcony, guitar in hand, I strummed it till my fingers ached. The stars above Flagstaff were sharp and cold, and the air smelled like pine and autumn coming in. I whispered something to the night, not sure if it was a goodbye or a blessing. And for the first time, I felt ready not just to leave the past behind, but to step toward whatever waited for me next.